We'll call the meeting of the City of Milton Common Council to order at 6 p.m. Is there confirmation of the appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
Okay. And is there a motion to approve the agenda? See Ryan and Linda as a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? We have an agenda. Linda, would you do the honors of, you have a flag in the background I see there. Would you do the honors of leading the Pledge of Allegiance?
One would you like? I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
of the
United
United States of America and to the republic
for
for
which
which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. Anissa is connecting.
You're still muted, Lisa.
We have completed the Pledge of Allegiance and we're ready for the mayor.
Bill, that was the best team building I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
It was great.
I'm not going to say anything.
So proud of all of you.
It was.
Them and work their way up.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, we're at number 4, public comments.
Correct.
Yes?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have anybody in our Zoom meeting for public comments?
The only members of the public that we have right now are Danny Stavarius with the Chamber and Kim McDarrison with the Courier.
And so I anticipate that Danny is here for the special event permit, so maybe we'll just wait till we get to that. Does that seem fair? Okay, so seeing nobody here for public comment right off the top, let's go ahead and move to discussion and action to approve renewal of alcohol licenses.
So as you may recall, earlier this year, the Common Council made a decision to reduce the alcohol license fees for all of our previous license holders for Class A and Class B and Class C licenses, and also extend the deadline, not necessarily extend it, but extend our process for as long as possible to allow people extra time to provide their license payments and things of that nature. So the licenses have been reduced for Class Bs and Class Cs, and now we're at the time when we would approve the licenses as we do on an annual basis for Class A and Class B and Class C. And our clerk, Leanne Schrader, has put forth the memo, as you can see in your attachment. There is no recommended of any denial of license applications. And this is the same list that we saw last year with 2 exceptions. One being Bunkers is in the process of selling their facility and in communications with the new owners of the future Bunkers, whatever it may be called, maybe still be called Bunkers. They intend to apply for a Class B license at the time that they're ready to open, but aren't in that position yet. And then Rocky's Pizza and Subs did not renew their Class B and Class C license. And we're not sure why. Rocky, the owner, didn't indicate as to why she didn't want to renew. That's the only change from last year. So in the event that Rocky does want to secure a Class B and Class C license again in the future, she certainly can do that. There aren't limits to those like there are with the alcohol license, Class B alcohol licenses. So she would be able to do that. But those are the only two changes from last year.
Okay, Larry, any questions or comments?
None, thank you.
Teresa?
No, no questions.
Linda?
No questions.
Devin?
No questions.
Bill?
No questions?
Ryan?
No questions.
Is there a motion to approve the renewal alcohol licenses for 2020 through 2021?
I'll make that motion.
Linda and Teresa, is that a second?
Second it, yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding a special event permit request for Milton Area Chamber of Commerce and Milton Historical Society. Do we want to take these as separate?
We skipped an item.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You know, I can't see anything. Item number 6, discussion and action to approve tobacco cigarette licenses for 2020, 2021.
Same situation applies here. These are the same license holders from previous years for the sale of tobacco and cigarettes. Arndt's, Casey's, Cowley's, Dollar General, both Quick Trips, and the Beverage Mart. There is no recommendation for denial. So they're brought those forward with recommendation for approval.
Ryan, any questions or comments?
No comment.
Bill?
No comments.
Devin?
No comments.
Linda?
No comments.
Teresa?
No comment.
Larry?
No comment.
Is there a motion to approve tobacco cigarette licenses for 2020, 2021?
So moved.
Larry's motioning.
I'll second it.
Teresa seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, so discussion and possible action regarding a special event permit request for Milton Area Chamber of Commerce and Milton Historical Society.
So we have received a special event permit request for the chicken barbecue and for the arts and crafts. Although these events are separate, they do have have some similarities to them as they are close to each other, and hope to garner action from both events. So both these events are kind of long-standing events in Milton and have been for a very long time, but under the new kind of environment that we are in, we're bringing forth special event permit requests to the council to make sure that everybody's comfortable with those moving forward. So similar to the conversation we had last week in regards to the Veterans Park dedication ceremony, we feel that one of the most appropriate kind of decision-making tools we have are the Rock County guidelines. And as we discussed at length last week, there are differences between public and private events. If the council views these as a public event, then we would recommend moving forward with them as proposed in the special event permit applications. If they view these as private events, then we believe the council should deny those permit requests. In both of these situations, they are open to the public. There's not an admission, there's not an invite list. Chicken barbecue is doing things quite differently this year, and Danny's on the line, so she can certainly answer questions in terms of how they intend to change their approach. But they're going to have a drive-through option this year, as opposed to kind of having it all just within the park. And because of that, they're going to have some changes to their previous, Milton House is going to have some changes to their previous street closures. Instead of closing down, the big section of Janesville Street, they would only need a portion of it closed, and Chicago Street would be open to allow kind of right out traffic from the community house. But other than that, they're discouraging use of the park for dine-in, if you want to call it that. They're not requesting any city resources other than the exclusive use of the park and the community house. They wouldn't be looking for any additional picnic tables or trash barrels or things of that nature. So it's fairly straightforward, at least in my opinion. And like I said, Danny's on to answer questions, and I'm sure she probably could answer questions about arts and crafts if you have them, since I know her and Keaton met late last week to kind of talk about it. But that's what we have, and yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yep, I'll just go ahead and go through our council members. Larry?
Okay.
So as I understand, it'll be strictly a drive-through to pick up chicken orders, correct then?
Correct. Like there will be 2 stops when you first pull in. There'll be a stop at a window where they get their ticket. They either get a pork ticket or a chicken ticket, and then they'll drive through to the next. And we're gonna have trays. We're gonna have the meals on, so we won't be like, kind of like all the drive-through restaurants are doing right now. And then they'll just go pull forward and exit right turn only out onto Janesville Street.
Okay.
Teresa?
The only question I had to do with the arts and craft area. I noticed that they were going to distribute water to the vendors, but I wondered if it was a very hot day, if it was possible to consider selling water to the people that come to visit the arts and craft area, just for their own benefit, not as a treat to anyone, but I'm just concerned about people on a very hot day.
The only discussion that Keaton and I have had about any kind of like food or beverage is just that since they're not doing any like venture wagon or anything this year, selling brats or burgers live, she asked if we would take orders ahead of time if the vendors wanted to order meals and we could deliver them over there to their vendors. And I had told her that that's a great possibility. We definitely could do that for her, but we have not discussed anything about beverages.
Right. It's just, I think their section said that they would just have water or something available for their vendors, but nothing else to sell to any visitors. So if you would just ask her.
Yep, I'll ask her for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Linda?
I don't have any questions, and I consider this a public gathering, and that's all.
Devin?
No questions.
Bill?
No questions.
Ryan?
First of all, I was looking through what the Milton House sent, and they actually put in there that they may sell beverages and water and sodas. So it looks like they're already possibly considering that, selling that to the local people,
okay.
not just
I
the
didn't
vendors.
see that part.
For their information, their stuff. Otherwise, I kind of view this as a public gathering, so I don't really have any issues with it.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ryan, I didn't see it.
Yeah,
So.
no problem. I just wanted, I just pulled it up to double check, and that's what I see. So.
All right, thank you.
Anissa, if we're taking both together, which I guess we are, I did have one question that concerns not the drive-through and the barbecue, but the arts and crafts fair.
Go ahead, ask it.
I believe the application that we got said that it hadn't fully been determined in terms of spacing on booths and so on. Danny, having had the most recent meeting, I guess, do they know, or are they anticipating fewer vendors, same number of vendors? Have any decisions been made regarding that spacing?
Sure. When I met with Keaton, she had told me that they are going to be doing less vendors this year, and that their plans are to have like an empty booth in between every vendor space.
That
Yeah, I don't
answers.
know if that's a final decision, but that's what she told me that they were going to be doing for social distance guidelines.
As long as the effort is made to, do whatever is possible to maximize that spacing, I think that's great. And what was in the listing in regard to, asking for barriers between the booths and so on, I think is great as well.
So do we want a motion for each permit, each special event permit, or how do we want to do this?
It's probably appropriate to have separate motions, even though I don't know that it's necessary, but if we want to have conditions on one, then that would, I guess, make it easier to kind of parse that out, and then I could communicate that back to Keaton tomorrow, or however you want to proceed.
Okay, well, let's take a motion regarding the Chamber's special event permit first.
I would move approval.
Okay, Bill's motion to approve and Linda seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so that permit's approved. And then is there a motion for the Milton Historical Society special event permit?
I'll move to approve that one.
Ryan's motion to approve and Linda's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Marky Mark.
Lisa, I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to review it and for approving it. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Danny, and thanks for hopping on the Zoom call.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.
Marky, did you have your hand up? Were you waving a mosquito or something? Okay, just checking. Just checking. Okay, item number 8, discussion and possible action on resolution 2020-18, waiving interest on property tax payment installments due on or before April 1st, 2020.
So I can let Dan take the majority of this, but I'll give you just a little bit of background. We were contacted by at least one, I think more than one that I'm aware of, residents who were interested or were inquiring if the city of Milton was going to take this approach. Dan has had several discussions with the county about this process that the county has afforded municipalities to do this if they so choose, so long as the governing body of each individual municipality passes a resolution to that accord. So Dan can explain kind of the process that's involved and what it means, and if folks have questions or comments or concerns, he certainly has the most information and most communications about it. But there has been requests for this from members of the public.
When the county initially when Act 185 was originally passed in mid-April, they sent a survey out to the treasurers to see if there was any interest. And originally I'd said no, because I hadn't heard anything in the community, because it felt like it should be more of a community-based thing. And then when Rock County eventually passed their resolution in mid-May, and then it picked up media coverage, like Al stated, that we had a few people, I believe, contact us and inquire. And like the memo says, there's only 505 parcels that would qualify. And I believe as of last week, there were 76 parcels that were unpaid that wouldn't qualify because they were delinquent as of April 1st. And then, in case you couldn't read the memo or didn't see it or whatnot, or for the media's benefit, some very important aspects to it is parcels had to be current as of April 1st in order to take advantage of this. And any delinquent amounts after October 1st will accrue interest and penalties on October 1st and beyond. And the first installment of the 2020 tax bills will still be due on January 31st. So that's essentially 4 months from October 1st. So there might be people that are like, wait, I just got done paying my second installment. And that due date for the 2020 tax bills for the 2021 budget will not change as of right now. And partial payments can be made anytime between now and October 1st. So I guess if there's any other questions other than that.
Ryan? Brian, do you have any questions? Bill?
Just for information purposes, is there a cost to the city? Frankly, I don't know how that is handled in terms of delinquency payments.
There isn't, because the county makes us whole by August 20th every year.
Okay.
And they still will. They aren't going to delay those payments. I found that out last week.
So if constituents were to ask, the net impact on city budget really is zero anyway.
Correct.
Thank you.
Devin?
No questions.
Linda?
No questions.
Teresa?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Is there a motion regarding this resolution? Linda?
I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 2020-18, waiving interest on property tax payments, installments due on or after April 1st, 2020.
Bill, are you seconding that? Are we good with that motion?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Moving on to item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding the Compliance Maintenance Annual Report, CMAR, and Resolution 2020-17.
I can let Howie and or Mark take this one. This is kind of a routine. I don't like using the word routine, but it's an annual process that we do in order to make sure that we are in compliance. So
this is it's a yearly report to the council on how the treatment plant's doing. It's a DNR requirement that you receive a copy that shows that the guys are doing all the yearly tests and how your treatment plant's operating. They do the grading system because if you start getting bad grades, then you have to start doing improvements at the plant. And sometimes you can even lose your voluntary improvement if you're not staying in the A or B grade system. They haven't really had, they're doing a really good, excellent job down there. They haven't had anything where we've had major violations for numbers of years, and usually those were just because the plant was getting old. So, but it is a requirement that the council look at this and that you pass a resolution that you have seen the reports that they have yearly. So, and it's just so in case you have any questions about the treatment plant. It's also, part of it is that the financial part is that there's enough money to run the plant to take care of emergencies.
Larry, do you have any questions or comments?
Just one question, and Howie, maybe you have an answer for this or might have to look it up and get back to me. But is our plant, in terms of qualifying for needs of improvement, or how far out are we before we have to do some major overhaul at the plant? Do you have an idea?
Right now, actually, our flows are down right now from a few years ago. There's so capacity, it's all right, and Mark can add to on this, but capacity for gallons are fine, but it would just depend on, I guess, what type of a user you might get. If you get all of a sudden, if you got an industry that had thousands of gallons, then you'd have to think about improving, ahead of schedule. So we don't have to do any major improvements right now, but it's just based on development for that.
Yeah, and I would add to that, the other piece would be possible regulatory requirement changes.
Right. Sure.
Could add, make an improvement necessary to meet a higher restriction on nitrogen effluent in the effluent, or phosphorus or whatever nutrient they're going to regulate or change.
Thank you.
But yeah, generally the plant runs about half capacity right now. And like Howie said, you could get a user that has a high flow, could take up some of the flow, or you could get a user that has a lower flow but has a high nutrient discharge that could potentially change the plant's operations without severely impacting the flow. But obviously those are all unknowns at this point.
Sure.
Thank you. Teresa?
No questions.
Linda?
Yes, I had a question with the phosphorus, the grade that we have on our phosphorus, and I see that there was one of our east developers had been contacted on that. Is that all taken care of now? So for the next report, we will have a better grade, I guess you call it.
Yeah, that happened just as a kind of a fluke where they did some major cleaning where they usually just send a small amount at once, and they normally haul everything away. And there was some investigation of what was going on. They had some new employees also that cleaned out a couple of their containers, and so we got more than normal. So that just took the plant a lot more. I guess the treatment plant had to have more effort with the treat, to get that phosphorus back to regular level. But they were contacted, and and they're hauling that stuff off site, and they're actually, the owner even talked to us about quite a bit about, he knows that they're not supposed to be doing that, but it was just some new employees that sent more than what you'd normally get. So
Okay, thank you.
Devin?
No questions.
Bill?
Just my only question related to new development and whether or not we look at that and consider the impact on the water treatment plant. Is that ever raised with a developer coming in?
I'd say almost every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
we'd get a red flag if we had something that was coming in that was going to be a real burden.
Yes.
Yeah, typically what we do, especially in manufacturing, it doesn't really pertain to residential development. I guess some commercial, but not that often, is we ask for their flows and their discharges in advance of that process. So we can make sure that we have the capacity, not only in terms of wastewater, but also water, which rarely is a problem for us in this area. But yeah, that's part of kind of the preliminary due diligence that we do and they do, because they want to know that too. So yeah, I would agree with Howie. It's probably pretty much every single industrial development, unless it's just a warehouse. But
thank you.
Ryan? Ryan?
I think he said no questions.
No, okay. I don't know why I can't hear him.
Yeah, he's unmuted, but I can't hear him either.
Oh, okay, so it's not just me. All right, thank you.
No.
Okay.
Ryan, something's going on with your mic, just so you know.
You hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. No comments or questions.
I like the way you just tore that off.
We heard that.
We need a motion for the resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Ryan raised his hand first.
Oh, okay. I'll second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to pass resolution 2020-17. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And I'll just add, the sewer utility is going to be debt free in 22 months and 1 week. So Mark Langer and I have been in great discussion to try to maintain that debt freeness in the sewer utility. And
Oh, okay, so I won't plan on spending it then.
right.
So that motion was to approve the resolution and the CMAR report.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we can upgrade the quality of the videos in the sewers. You know, we can higher production values.
There's got to be something we can do. Okay. Item 10, discussion and possible action accepting a donation of materials from Frank Silla and Sons Excavating for the replacement of the North Library parking lot wall.
So this is an item that has garnered considerable discussion over the last few weeks in talking with local contractors and landscaping experts. Donnie and I had the opportunity to meet with Dan Silla, specifically of Frank Silla and Sons Excavating, on site at the library to show him kind of what we were looking at and what we needed. And through that discussion with Dan, he very, very, very graciously offered to provide us all of the material we needed for no cost, so long as we go retrieve the material from his quarry and haul it over. He said that he would give it to us at no cost. That's a very generous offer because, as you kind of are all aware, the replacement of that wall, one of our major concerns was that it could be very costly to replace it either with like material or even different material. So his offer is greatly appreciated to kind of hopefully fix that problem that exists there with the kind of just the age of that wall. Limestone doesn't hold up over time. And then to replace it with new limestone could be very, very expensive. We went through a similar process on Columbus Street a number of years ago, and that was costly. So we are very appreciative of Mr. Silla's offer to provide that material for us, and our crews will then remove the current wall and replace it with new materials in a kind of in a more modern fashion. And Mark is working with is talking with some other folks about how to potentially tie that into the existing wall that runs behind the properties on Rogers Street. The wall on Davis and the wall on Rogers Street, although they may be viewed as one wall, they aren't actually tied together. But if we are able to do that, we would like to do that in order to kind of just increase the structural integrity of that wall. So what is being donated is just for that portion of Davis Street. I want to make sure that folks kind of understand that. We're not going to disturb the wall along Rogers Street because that would be a very invasive activity to do that. And so long as that wall maintains and the neighbors are happy with it, we don't want to upset it if we don't have to. But the one on Davis Street does need repair. And one of the options that we had in front of us was to remove the wall and then simply re-slope the land, which would have been a solution, but one that wouldn't have been as nice. So we're very, very appreciative of Mr. Silla's offer, and hope that the council agrees.
Ryan, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments.
Bill?
No, only gratitude.
Wait till y'all have to go out to the quarry and haul rock. Devin?
No questions.
Linda?
I was just wondering, Howie, wasn't the repair of the other wall also donated?
No, we purchased those rocks. It's just the guys did those, and there were some other at that time Hulberts that lived right across from Columbus Street. They donated money for part of it. We had to add some money to it, but you're right, they did donate some of the money for that. Yeah. So that's when we put the sidewalk in and some other things. But the Hulbert family that owned that house on the corner, they donated some money for that wall on Columbus Street.
Mm-hmm. That's great. These donations are keeping our walls up all over.
Teresa?
No, just that it is a very generous donation.
Larry?
No comment. I'm super happy we found the solution.
Yep. It was a little bit of a process, and we're very appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
We look forward to this going forward. Is there a motion to accept that donation of materials from Frank Silla and Sons Excavating?
I'll make a motion.
Teresa?
Yes.
Devin, second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, great. I don't know, do we have any committee reports? I feel like we just met.
Mayor now for comment.
Is it a committee report or is it?
No, from
Okay.
the previous.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Al, if we can, and Howie and whatever, and Mark, if we can find some way to recognize their generous donation when it's done, maybe just temporary sign for a couple months, something like that. That's very generous on their part to donate that material. So if we can find a way to, or put it in our, new utility newsletter or on the website. Something.
Sure, that's a great idea, Larry.
We also have a social media extraordinaire in our employ who can help spread the word too.
Cool.
Is that you?
No, it's you.
Oh, okay.
She's ignoring you.
It's Ashley. It's Ashley. She's the yes and no woman. Okay, so I don't know that we have any committee reports right now. Do we?
The Joint Review Board will meet tomorrow afternoon for their annual meeting.
That's exciting.
That's a pre-committee report.
Join us on Zoom. Staff reports. Howie.
Just doing the summer things now, catching up on mowing, and probably considering after 4th of July sending out a few more code enforcement letters. Even some just trying to get people to do things, and other things they're just going to be mandatory ones. So we're going to send out a general letter to some of the businesses and stuff too. And then we're otherwise the splash park picnic tables got put in. They were from last year, so they're just kind of catching up on things. The guys are for mowing and different things. So, and the work at in front of Milton East was where they connected with their sanitary sewer into highway, in the highway where that was the work that was going on there for that detour today.
Marky, where is he?
I'm here.
Mark,
The
Marky,
effluent force main project is nearly complete. And the agreements were sent to the contractor for the North Janesville Street project. Other than that, not a whole lot more has changed, I guess.
Okay. Dan, anything else?
Nope.
Inga?
Today I did record a short podcast with Barb Brown with the One Apple Lunch Bunch. So I'll plan to have that posted later this week.
Nice.
Chief?
I continue to have conversations with community members about police reform and mainly questions about how we do things in Milton. Those have been very well received, and am enjoying meeting people and talking to them a little bit about how we do here. One of the things that I'm working on right now is a revision of our use of force policy to help make it a little bit more transparent to the community, the things that we do, and when that is finished, I do plan on doing some publicity around it and putting it up on our website so people can review it at their leisure.
Great. Ashley?
We are just continuing on with curbside. It's going very well. Staff is healthy, and we will be cautiously opening our doors on Monday, July 6th.
Okay, so that's when I officially have to return my books.
Well, due dates are back into effect, so.
Okay, so that means I have a fine? Is that what you're saying?
You might.
I'll be bringing in some canned goods, I guess. Al?
No major updates from since last week. Continue to kind of move into the new phase 2. We've had, good experience with the public. Folks are I don't know if they're hesitant to return, but certainly our walk-in traffic is greatly diminished, but perhaps that will pick up as time goes on. Other than that, continue to kind of monitor things from the Rock County Health Department and my role on the Rock County Task Force, and trying to stay moving forward.
Okay. Inga, do we have videos?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay, hold on to your seats. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to.
Yes.
Not hearing the audio, though.
You're not hearing the audio?
No.
None of it? Well, that's neat. Oh! See, we did this as a test before. Ah, share computer sound. That's what I didn't click on. Sorry, everyone.
This is why we do it with the council first.
Now you can see it?
Yep.
Okay, and
explain the concept of being an anti-racist.
So I think first and foremost, we've been led to believe that the sort of contrast is between racist and not racist. I'm sure you've heard someone say, "I'm not racist." Anybody heard that? And so when someone says to me, "I'm not racist," I typically respond, well, what is it not racist? Like, what does it mean to be not racist as opposed to racist? And typically people have never actually thought about that question. And it's also the case that typically people cannot even define racist. And typically the concept of not racism is really an act of denial. And so if the contrast from racist is not racist, does that make sense? It is anti-racist. And so really, when we sort of understand the contrast, and I'm speaking really about the contrast because it's hard to understand what it means to be anti-racist without understanding what it means to be racist. But, anti-racist ideas suggest that the racial groups are equals. Racist ideas suggest that certain racial groups are superior or inferior, better or worse than others. Racist policies yield racial inequity. Anti-racist policies yield racial equity. Racist people are people who are expressing racist ideas or are supporting racist policies with their action or even inaction. And I say inaction because if you do nothing in the face of racist policies, then essentially, since racist policies are more or less the norm, you're maintaining that norm of racism. While to be anti-racist is one who is expressing anti-racist ideas or supporting anti-racist.
okay. So that was the first one. And then here's the second one. You guys heard it all okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's the second one.
So why are these conversations that we try to have about race, why are they so unproductive?
Oh man, where's my
Yeah, I know. Just get your book out and just start reading it right up here, yeah.
So I think first and foremost, this isn't in any sort of order. I think you have everyone imagine themselves as the expert on race because they're racialized. And so what happens is we even, for instance, have difficulty talking about medicine. At the same time, we recognize there's a such thing as medical researchers and doctors, right? So can you imagine if, generally speaking, we didn't even consider doctors to have expertise, how difficult it would be for us to sort of have a conversation, a difficult conversation about medicine. And with that being said, part of the difficulty is you have so many people who refuse to accept their diagnosis. And you have so many institutions who refuse to accept that they are racist. And who constantly, of course, want to defend themselves, even though those whose expertise is assessing them is essentially making the case how and why they're racist. And I think people do not want to be identified as racist, partly because of the way that we've actually defined it. And what I mean by that is, I think in many ways, people believe that a racist is like a fixed category. It's like an identity. It's essentially who you are. And combined with that, we've been led to believe that a racist is fundamentally a bad person. And so I'm a good person, so I'm not racist. And I don't want to have that sort of tattoo on myself for the rest of my life. When in fact, at least I define racist and even anti-racist as not a fixed category. It's not necessarily who you are, but what you are doing in the moment. And the reason why that's critical is because there's so many complex people. So when it comes to criminal justice, they're racist. But when it comes to the environment, they're anti-racist. And when it comes to healthcare, they're anti-racist. But then when it comes to education, and they're racist. And so people are deeply complex. And so I really think we should define it based on what a person is saying and doing in the moment.
So I want to, I didn't do a very good job of introducing that because I had sent an email to everyone saying, except for Mark Langer, I think, I forgot him on the email, saying that we were going to watch these two videos and have a short discussion about it on just what your thoughts and feelings and kind of responses are to these videos. And as we all are aware, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of action and protests around surrounding the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Inga and I sat in on a courageous conversation last night that was moderated by the YWCA and Diversity Action Team. And so I've been reading and listening to podcast by Professor Kendi for a little while, and he has some really good books out. So I wanted to just expose us together to some of those concepts and to get your thoughts and your feelings, and not to put anybody on the spot or anything, but you know, just to have a little bit of a conversation and to think about you know, moving forward, how do we as a community, as a council, embrace some of these anti-racist concepts, and what does action look like, maybe? And that might be a different discussion. But so anyways, I'm just interested in what your thoughts are and your feelings are about that.
One of the things that resonated with me, especially in the second video, is the discussion about experts. And I could talk probably for an hour straight on how fascinating that is, that there are no experts anymore. And maybe that's just because there's Google. But nobody respects, not the right word. There's less acknowledgement of people's expertise in their field. And especially when it comes to racial conversations, one of the things that I have learned is I am also not an expert, and people people's lived experiences that aren't me. And all too often when somebody describes, hey, this happened to me, I have reacted with, well, that can't be true, or that's not what they meant, instead of allowing them to be an expert in what they actually experienced and taking that as face value.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I think throughout life I've experienced feeling different, and from the physical challenge viewpoint, so I can relate that. And I'm interested in the idea that one could be a racist and also can't be, all in the same body and the same person. And I think that's a challenge for all of us to realize we take on different roles depending on the situation and depending on the people we're interacting with. Different.
Yep.
I came across this thing on Facebook where a man who was, as an adult, he was a minister, and he wrote about an apology, a long apology to a childhood friend that he had had, and a childhood friend was Black, and he apologized of all the things he had done, he and his family, in terms of the friendship that he had had with this friend, and that they thought that they were treating him as an equal. And as he looked back at it, he realized that he was being racist, he and his family. And he gave examples over and over and over again. And I responded to his posting that you've given me a lot to think about, because those are some of the things that I would have considered, oh gee, I do a nice job. And no, they are racist. And I would have never have thought from that perspective. So I, just said I appreciate your willingness to put it out there for all of us to think about. And it was just lots of people adding to it, because we need it out there to actually think about.
Yeah. If it's not brought to our awareness, then we don't have an opportunity to become, better persons and interact more respectfully and more thoughtfully with different cultures, different sexual orientations. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate people willing to publicly share that to help others.
I filter a lot of this stuff through whatever I happen to be reading, and it always strikes me that generally I'm reading something that is relevant to something that's going on. And in the stuff I've been doing and kind of reading through the presidents, it just happened that the presidents that, and Larry's part of the book group as well, so you've been reading about the same people, but we did Eisenhower and Kennedy, and now we're on to Lyndon Johnson. So, we've been covering a period where all kinds of things were happening. It happens that I also, lived that period. So, come from a different sort of perspective. And one of the things that I ended up revisiting, because there was a quote that jumped out at me, was Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. And I know I had read it before, The quotation that appeared in the book was so powerful. I went back and read the whole thing, and posted it to my Facebook page, because what King was talking about was the reaction to people saying, "Well, just wait, be patient. Things are getting better," essentially, King, in his incredible, even-tempered sort of way, was saying, we've been waiting 400 years, and in light of the chief's comments about trying to project yourself into what somebody else is experiencing, you start to understand some of the anger, some of the hopelessness, some of those kinds of things coming through in one of our great leaders. I find myself, as I read the history stuff, constantly examining myself and saying, what am I doing now that at a future date is going to be viewed as being, whether it's racist or whether it's going to be intolerant? What is it that I'm doing? And I think we all have to continue to look at ourselves and know that things change. I know in my lifetime, attitudes have changed greatly. In a number of different ways. And I think we have to keep on looking at that and keep on asking ourselves, how does my behavior comport? And that goes along with the video, I think, in terms of if you're not anti-racist, then you're probably complicit.
Thanks, Phil.
Bill, I just read that letter last night. Just last night, so it's pretty remarkable that we were talking about it. And that the whole concept of that book is why we can't wait. And what's so difficult for me to comprehend is, that book was written in 1965. It was over 50 years ago. He was saying that they can't wait. It's 2020. We're still having that conversation. It's impossible to comprehend for me as someone who has not been subjected to that for their life, to understand how difficult that must be. There are people who have said to me in my life, well, you'll understand when you're a parent. Or now that I am a parent, sometimes I think, well, you don't understand, you're not a parent. Sometimes being a parent is a life choice we make. Or not being a parent is a life choice we make. The color of your skin is not a life choice that you have made. You cannot undo that or change that. But you live with it every single day. And I can't comprehend that. That's why I want to learn more and understand and listen.
Yeah, and I think, too, that's such a good point, because I don't think I have ever processed a conversation or an interaction and thought, I wonder if it's because I'm white. I have never thought that. That's not something that goes through my head. If somebody says something rude to me, I don't think it's because I'm white. I don't think about the color of my skin ever. And that's just kind of an example of that advantage that you have when you're a white person. And it's not, I didn't choose to be born white, but there were advantages that I did nothing I didn't earn them. They were just given to me because I'm white. And one of those is I don't have to think about the color of my skin. And it's not like to shame people or to make them feel guilty, but just to acknowledge there's policies and systems that were created even long before slavery existed that have continued to this day, that we've been told all along were fair and reasonable, and they haven't been. And there's, there's facts and there's data to back that up too. So I'm just so appreciative of everybody like engaging in this conversation.
There's a strong parallel in the disabled community. I've been a lifelong advocate of going into businesses where I can't get in and discussing them putting a ramp in, a simple ramp to access their business. Had a conversation with a gentleman this weekend who I've known for many years, and he said, "You never come into my business." And I said, "Well, you don't have a ramp to get in your business." "Oh, I guess that's why. Maybe you shouldn't come here." Interesting parallel that I experience regularly, even though I'm a white person. But I have a challenge that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, which is similar to being a different color, or may not be familiar with the culture of that group, or may not understand that we passed the ADA how many years ago, and there's still people who don't see the need to put access into their bathrooms or their facilities for commercial use. Interesting.
And Larry, do you ever think it's because you're white, though?
It may be. I wondered, and this is the thing that intrigues me, is I had a friend in college who was also physically challenged, but he was also an African American. And I wonder if maybe their burdens are even worse than maybe what I've experienced. Perhaps.
Right.
There's another layer there.
Yep.
Yes. You think of everything that we discriminate against, whether it's a handicapping situation, or, we handicap, whether it's physical handicap, color, the skin, language, whether they can speak the English, or if you don't understand what they're saying, and so you just ignore it. And if they are just other handicaps that we consider unworthy of attending to, or if it's a financial handicap. The list is very long, and we definitely discriminate in many, many ways. But yeah, we ignore it much of the time.
I think it is easy to not think about it when it doesn't impact us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's easy for all of us to do.
And I think that's true, Anissa, because till my 40s I walked, but all of a sudden when I got in a wheelchair, I realized, wow, I'm not going to be able to get in that building. Wow, I've got to get a wheelchair accessible van. I can't just hop into any vehicle and drive it. Wow, I have to have specialized clothing. It's a mind-boggling experience, frankly. And so it must be similar to like the things that Teresa was talking about, for people who experience those things. All of a sudden you don't have the education that you need to survive. You're working in a plant and you can't read the signs, the warning signs. You're in school and you can't speak English clearly. It's just amazing the parallels go on.
One of the things I was just kind of marginally aware of, but heard an interview with Van Jones, and he was talking about the talk, the talk that African American parents have with, in particular, their boys, as far as you've got to behave differently than the rest of the world, and kind of alerting people to that situation. And it was painful to watch that interview, because you could see him hurting for his children, in terms of telling them what they had to do to deal with a very real inequity that is going to be a reality and a way of life for them.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two boys. I didn't have to have that talk with them. That wasn't a burden that was placed on me or my children. That's another example of just, I have white skin, so I didn't have to have that talk. My kids have white skin. It's just something, and I can't even imagine as a parent having to worry about that. The only, thing I can relate even remotely is worrying about my son when he was deployed. But Marines aren't deployed forever.
Right.
And these talks and the systemic racism has gone on for over 400 years. I can't even imagine like the generational trauma that everybody has to go through. I can't experience that. So that's a really good point, Bill.
No, but I think the converse of that is, as a parent of white children, is having the talk in the opposite direction, so that they understand that they have privilege, and that they should never weaponize it and never use it as a tool of oppression or belittling or hatred or to take advantage of. Recognize that you have it, and the world is different for you because of it, and that never ever, under any circumstance, use it as a weapon or a tool to your advantage. That's what I hope to convey to my boys, and hopefully that's the conversation that can happen conversely for folks who have conversations, unfortunately, with their children of people of color.
There any other thoughts or comments?
I guess my final thought is that it's easy, this kind of it's easy to make things black and white, for us to think about black and white, but there are so many qualifiers that we place out there. Larry brought up one of them, but the LGBTQ framework is another one. The Asian population is experiencing some really, really awful stuff because of the comments that have been made by a person who should know better. Those translate into bad actions. And going back to our video again, it takes more than just not doing bad things. It takes exercising action to make sure that that arc that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about moving towards equality continues to happen.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too, because our founders, were abolitionists, and we have this great history, and we were a sundown community, and a lot of the communities in Rock County were. And that's heartbreaking to me that we didn't allow Black people in our community after the sun went down. So it's this, the paradox of it all too. And it just, it's something to think about. We have a lot to be proud of, and we have a lot more to learn about and to do better at too. So I appreciate your willingness to have this courageous conversation. And with that, our next meeting, unless there's somebody else that I've missed that really wants to say something, I don't want to cut the discussion off short. If I'm wrapping it up too soon, please let me know. Our next meeting is July 7th? No, I'm missing somebody.
No, I'm shaking my head at my son who wants me to open up a bottle of Windex.
Oh.
So, that'll chestnut.
Yeah.
Isn't everybody doing that right now? Everybody working on that problem?
If it was only that. So our next meeting is July 7th, 2020. Is there a motion to adjourn?
What time?
6, right?
And we're doing it on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I tried to change this meeting time. But we had to follow some regulation or something. You know how that goes.
Yeah, everything froze there. Yes, the next meeting is July 7th. It will be on Zoom. We have a couple of public hearings that evening that have been noticed as Zoom meetings as well. So don't go to try to change something again, okay? You got a process here, man.
We're going to talk chickens and bees. That's what we're talking. And I think maybe the last meeting in July, we can revisit Zoom meetings again. Because we did get the survey back. But this is not on the agenda. So before I get in trouble by Mark S., do we do a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Linda and Teresa want to adjourn. Does anybody want to second that? No. Linda motion, Teresa second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Goodbye. July 7th.
Shalom.
Thanks, everybody.